Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. At UFC Vegas 77, Holly Holm versus Mayra Bueno Silva. We saw some horrendous performances, and we are going to discuss the worst performers of the card because I'm going to give my opinion on who needs to be cut from the UFC after their performance at UFC Vegas 77. Now, before I get into my list, do me a favor, comment down below. What fighters do you believe need to be cut from the UFC after seeing their performance on this card? And the way I order this list, I'm going to save the last for who I believe most needs to be cut from the organization. So the deeper I get into the list, the more horrible you performed on this card and the more I believe you need to be cut from the organization. Starting off with my first cut, that is Ottman Azitar. Ottman Azitar at one point in time was considered a future contender. He was considered a prospect to watch. You know, people were upset when Ottman Azitar was cut after the whole Fight Island scandal. And then Ali Abdelaziz got him re-signed to the organization. Well, now he's lost 2 fights in a row. He's lost 2 fights by stoppage. He gets finished by Francisco Prado in the first round. He was having an okay performance up until the finish, but he gets dropped badly, hurt badly, ground and pound finished, and he took a lot of damage in this fight. And he's already coming off a KO loss to Matt Frevola. And on top of that, you look back, he hasn't won a fight since 2020, September of 2020. So he's coming up on 3 years since he's had a win, and he's lost 2 fights via KO in the first round, and bad KOs at that. And I know some people said, oh, the Prado finish was a little bit early. It was not early. You could honestly make an argument that it was late. I thought it was a perfect stoppage. They gave Azaitar plenty of time to attempt to recover and survive, but he ate like 30 shots without defending himself. Of course, they're going to stop the fight. And now you take into account he's 33 years old. You know, and I know it's kind of fringe. He's only on a 2-fight losing streak. But at 33 years old, you're getting KO'd in back-to-back fights. And I know it's not against the most terrible competition. Francisco Prado, you know, is a young, up-and-coming killer who's constantly putting pressure on guys. And Matt Frevola, you know, up until this point, I feel like he was underrated. And Matt Frevola now is surging in the lightweight division, potentially being a future contender soon. But I just think it's probably time for Ottman Azitar to be cut from the UFC. I'm going to discuss at the end of this list who I believe the UFC will actually cut, but we'll talk about that later in the list. Moving on to my next cut, and that is Terence McKinney. I think this is going to shock a lot of people because Terence McKinney, you know, at one point in time, people were like, Terence McKinney's a future champ. Terence McKinney is so good. I can't wait to see where Terence McKinney goes. Terence McKinney would smash Paddy Pimblett, and people were so high on Terence McKinney at one point in time. Man, has that hype died off. He lost to Nazim Sdykhov in the second round, and he won the first round. He took him down, took his back, got the body triangle, did absolutely nothing with it. Didn't really get close to a submission, didn't really land any ground and pound. Then in the second round, he's like spamming takedowns. He looks uncoordinated, and he eventually gives up his back, leaves his arm trapped because he's trying to grab the fence or push off the fence, gets his arm trapped where he's essentially body triangle, where his arm is literally perpendicular with his spine or parallel with his spine. That is crazy. That is absolutely crazy. Cannot defend a rear naked choke in that position. Gets finished in the second round. And then afterwards, he's making nothing but excuses. I do think Sdykhov was grabbing the fence. Do I think it changed the outcome of the fight significantly? No, I don't. I do not think it changed it. I think Terence McKinney was already fading, and that's the crazy part, and that's kind of why he's on this list, is because you look at his performance, he looked tired starting the second round. We've always kind of discussed his gas tank and how he comes out explosive and he gasses himself out. Well, the last 2 fights, he's tried to fight quote-unquote smart, and now he's got finished in both of them. The fight before that, he got finished by Ismail Bonfim, and he got finished via flying knee in the second round, and people were hyping up Bonfim, only for Bonfim to go in his next fight and lose his next fight. You know, it's crazy to me the amount of hype that Terence McKinney got off of KOing Matt Frevola so quickly in the first round. It was unwarranted. It was completely unwarranted, and it's just crazy to me also how Terence McKinney has now lost 3 out of his last 4, and not just that, he's lost 3 out of his last 4 by finish. That is craziness. And, you know, it's crazy also. Drew Dober, at the time he fought him, was on short notice. He fought Drew Dober on short notice. Drew Dober, I think, was ranked like 14th or 15th in the lightweight division at that point in time. And he almost beat Drew Dober. He almost finished Drew Dober. He was able to survive. He goes on to beat Eric Gonzalez in his next fight. Then he gets starched by Ismail Bonfim. And now he gets finished by Nazim Sdykhov. And I just think Terence McKinney, You know, he's still very young. Of course, he can go outside the organization, win a couple fights, and come back. But I just don't see the hype that people were projecting onto him or the skill level that people were projecting onto him. He's super explosive, has crazy power, but he's trying to fight smart because his gas tank isn't there. And when he fights smart, there's worse performances. So I think it's time for the UFC probably part ways with Terence McKinney. Honestly, I was going to save this for the end of the video, but if I'm running the UFC, I book Ottman Azitar versus Terence McKinney. Whoever loses that fight gets cut from the organization. And that's a banger of a matchup, to be quite honest. Both guys are kind of strikers. Both guys are kind of explosive. I know McKinney mixes in the wrestling, and he probably will try to wrestle against Azaitar. But I think you book those two guys up against each other. Loser leaves town. Loser gets cut from the organization. Moving up on the list of who needs to be cut from the UFC, and that is Austin Lingo. Austin Lingo loses to Melquizael Costa. Just gets beat up for 3 rounds. Took a lot of damage in this fight. Just got body kicked into oblivion. 8 head kicks. 8 a nasty amount of strikes in this fight. And to be quite honest, Austin Lingo was literally a punching bag in this fight. And he's only on a 2-fight losing streak. He lost the fight before this to Nate Landwehr, got finished by Nate Landwehr. And that's ironic because I literally think Austin Lingo is like a Family Dollar version of Nate Landwehr. I just don't think he's skilled enough to be in the organization. He's 9-3. He's 29 years old. He moves forward. He's tough. He's durable. He's gritty. But that isn't enough to cut it. That isn't enough to match that skill set of your opponent when you could just walk through shots unless your opponent gasses himself out. And that didn't happen in this fight. Didn't happen in the fight before this. And I just think Austin Lingo is basically a proverbial featherweight punching bag. And he's only on a 2-fight losing skid. That's why he's towards the back of this list. Maybe they give him one more opportunity. But what's the point? Where's he going in the featherweight division? He's just basically a guy for, fresh contenders that we don't really know how good they are. Oh, let's see how good they beat up Austin Lingo, and then we can kind of matchmake him from there. I just think Austin Lingo is a walking punching bag. He can he can get cut from the UFC, go to another organization, maybe have some success. Austin Lingo is one of those guys I could see going to BKFC. He strikes me as a BKFC type of guy. But I believe after this performance, Melquizael Costa came in, I think he had 1 fight in the UFC against Thiago Moises on short notice. And I think Costa's very good. I think he's proven to be a very, decent fighter. We don't know how good he is just yet. But to see Lingo just get brutally hurt to the body multiple times, to get chewed up with combinations, and now it's 2 losses in a row, hasn't won a fight since August of 2021. I think it's time for the UFC to part ways with Austin Lingo. Moving up on my list, the next cut is Tucker Lutz. I hate to say this, but Tucker Lutz needs to be cut from the organization. And I hate to say it off of this fight because Melsik Bagdasaryan cheated multiple times in this fight. He grabbed the fence, he punched him in the groin, and then head kicked him immediately afterwards. He eye poked him pretty badly. So even though Tucker Lutz lost via unanimous decision, I do feel for him because there was a lot of things that didn't go his way in this fight. But Melsik Bagdasaryan was just outstriking him for the majority of the fight. Now Tucker Lutz is on a 3-fight losing streak. Lost to Daniel Pineda in his last fight, got finished by him. And he's like 40-some years old, I think. So, in the fight before that, lost to Pat Sabatini. 3-fight losing streak, hasn't won a fight since May of 2021. Tucker Lutz, only 29 years old. He arguably could, some people could have gave him the first round against Bagdasaryan where he got the grappling, but he really wasn't doing anything with it. So I don't think he should have even got that first round. So he should have lost 30-27. I don't remember what the scorecards were, but the striking looks sluggish. The grappling is subpar, to be quite honest. The jiu-jitsu isn't really there. So what path does he really have? I don't really see what path he has in the division. And this is another guy who fights in the featherweight division that's just kind of a warm body. We're just throwing Tucker Lutz on Holly Holm Fight Night cards just to fill spots on the card. He's 12-4, 3-fight losing streak. Hasn't really showed any flashes of brilliance. It looks like he's slowing down. He looks like he's honestly regressing, to be quite honest. And I think maybe some time outside of the UFC, again, a lot of these guys are very young. Some time outside of the UFC, maybe they can get on a couple win streak, and then they can come back on short notice, maybe get a win on short notice because they're ready. We've seen so many guys get a second chance in the UFC and make the best of it on short notice. But at this point in time, Tucker Lutz, I think it's time the UFC cuts him from the organization on a 3-fight losing streak. If they want to give him one more fight because he was so egregiously fouled in this one, fair enough. But Melsik Bagdasaryan, I think he's a decent fighter, but I don't think he's going to be a future top 15 contender or even top 20 contender anytime soon. And the fact that he's just easily outstriking him and Tucker Lutz was slowing down in the third round, I think it's time for Lutz to be cut from the organization. Moving up on my list of cuts from the UFC, I think it's time for the UFC to cut Carl Deaton III. Carl Deaton loses to Alex Munoz. Wasn't the worst loss. Honestly, I thought there was a world where you could give him the first and second round, but Munoz most likely took it. He did take it. He wins via decision. And just Deaton was getting rocked like every round, just getting lit up every round. Nothing crazy, but it's just like this fight in general, Alex Munoz wasn't being very active, and then Deaton, when he was active, he wasn't even landing a whole lot. He was landing some, but he was really having no effect. He's lost 2 fights in the UFC now. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. He's never even won a fight in the UFC, and he got mauled by Joe Solecki in the fight before this, got finished via rear naked choke. Again, he's just one of these gritty guys who's just kind of there to be a warm body and fill out the UFC roster. He's 17-7 in his overall record. He's 33 years old. Where's he going? Where's the path forward in the UFC? A lot of these times I'm talking about these guys need to be cut from the organization, not because I'm wishing harm upon them and therefore for them to lose their job. One, the barrier of entry to the UFC has lowered over the past 5, 6, 7 years, but also, why do I want to watch Carl Deaton get beat up for the next few years? I don't need to see that. He's already 33 years old, already losing badly a lot of these fights. He got rocked multiple times, almost finished badly by Munoz in the third round, got dropped badly, arguably could have been stopped, got finished by Joe Solecki. And Carl Deaton, the skills just aren't there. He doesn't have the technical ability, doesn't have the speed. He's a gritty fighter, don't get me wrong, but where's he going in the lightweight division? The lightweight division is the most stacked division, or one of the most stacked divisions in the UFC. I actually think bantamweight is the most stacked. So where's Carl Deaton going? Where's he going from here? Oh yeah, there's a matchup I'm really dying to see. No, he's super low level, super bottom of the barrel. He's 33 years old on a 2-fight losing streak. It's time for Carl Deaton III to be cut from the organization. Moving up on my list, this list is a mile long, let me remind you. But next on the list is Genaro Valdez. I hate to do it because I like watching Valdez fight. He comes to fight every single time. He loses to Evan Elder. Just got out-kicked and outstruck in this fight. Had some moments, rocked Evan Elder, I think in the second round it was. But he's lost 3 in a row now. He's taken so much damage. He got rocked by Evan Elder in this fight. Got lit up by Evan Elder in this fight. The fight before that against Nathan Levy got, lit up by him in that fight. And then the fight against Matt Frevola, he must have got dropped like 17 times in that fight. So I think Valdez, I don't know, if I really want to see him cut, because I do think, even though he's bottom of the barrel, I do think he's a gritty, fun fighter to watch, and he does have some decent striking ability. But the fact that he's so defensively irresponsible, and the fact that he's constantly getting lit up, and the fact that he's constantly eating jabs. Evan Elder was pumping the jab all night. Evan Elder was kicking him to the body. And I just think Valdez just doesn't have the fundamentals to compete anywhere near a high level. And that's what the UFC is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the best fighters in the world. And you're getting outclassed by Evan Elder. I don't think Valdez won a single round of this fight. And now he's on a 3-fight losing streak. You look at his overall record, 10-3. It's not looking very good for him. Never won a fight in the UFC. Came off of Dana White's Contender Series. Got a win there. But after that, lost to Matt Frevola, lost to Nathan Levy, lost to Evan Elder. 3-fight losing streak. I think the writing's on the wall. I hate to see him go because he is exciting, but at the same time, what are we going to watch him get beat up for years to come? It's a common theme here. I don't want to see these guys just stick around taking damage. Maybe there's some fun matchups for him to get him back on the winning track. He's only 31 years old, but 31 years old, especially in the lightweight division, it's starting to get there. It's now or never for him. You're supposed to be hitting your prime. It's not like he's one of these guys that the UFC is going to try to build and give like the Sean O'Malley or the Bo Nickel treatment. It's sink or swim right now. And I think, unfortunately, 3 fights in a row, I think he needs to be cut from the organization. Moving up on my list to probably the most controversial cut of the entire list, and that is the UFC needs to cut Holly Holm immediately. I want Holly Holm cut from the roster. I never want to see her in another main event again. She's 41 years old. And I think she is one of the most overrated women's fighters of all time. She has been riding the coattails of a 2016 KO win over Ronda Rousey for the last 7 years. Holly Holm looked atrocious in this main event, and she did the same thing she's been doing for the last few years. If she can't run away from the fight and just circle and throw little pillow punch combinations, then what she'll do is attempt to just clinch up and hold you against the fence and stall the fight. It's infuriating. She attempted to do that against Mayra Bueno Silva. The first round, she was just kind of circling, throwing little pitter-patter shots. I thought Bueno Silva won the first round because she landed the harder shots. And then it was Holly Holm just clinching up, trying to hold on to her. Second round, same thing. She eventually gets submitted via a modified guillotine or a ninja choke, whatever you want to call it. Thank you, Mayra Bueno Silva. She saved the women's bantamweight division. I'm going to be honest. If I had to watch Holly Holm at 41 years old fight for the bantamweight title, I was going to throw up. The UFC has stuck with Holly Holm because they've just used her basically popularity that was built solely off of the Ronda Rousey KO. Holly Holm has not had an impressive performance literally since the Ronda Rousey fight, essentially. I know people, maybe you can say the Betch Quijada fight because she got a KO there, but that's the only finish she's gotten since she beat Ronda Rousey, and that was all the way back in 2017. Holly Holm has not gotten a finish since 2017. She got beat by Chris Cyborg. She beat Megan Anderson. She beat Raquel Pennington. She got finished by Amanda Nunes. She beat Irene Aldana. Okay, solid win. She lost to Ketlen Vieira. In the Ketlen Vieira fight, she was just clinching up, holding on for dear life as well. She got the win over a washed-up Yana Santos, formerly Yana Kutsakaya. Not all that great of a win considering Santos is washed up. And she's basically just been kind of trading wins and losses for the last few years, riding the coattails of the popularity from the head kick KO over Ronda Rousey. Holly Holm literally has been throwing, just sprinting forward, throwing the same combination and just circling, trying to avoid a fight. And if you catch up to her and you land shots, she's just going to try to use her strength, clinch up with you, and stall the fight against the fence. I don't want to see it anymore. I don't want to see her in any more main events. I hope Mayra Bueno Silva ended the streak of main events, but I don't trust the UFC. And I'll be damned if I watch a Holly Holm versus Miesha Tate Apex main event in 2023. So help me God, I'm skipping the card. It would not surprise me. Oh my goodness. I don't even want to think about it. I'm disgusting myself. Oh my goodness. Please no. And I just want the UFC to cut her. She's 41 years old. The UFC has done a horrible job of attempting to fill out these women's divisions with talent, particularly the bantamweight division and particularly the featherweight division. The bantamweight division, and honestly, this deserves its own video. The bantamweight division has essentially been frozen in time since Ronda Rousey left. Ronda Rousey left, what, 2017? I think she fought in 2017 after she lost in 2016. She fought at the end of 2017 against Amanda Nunes. The division has been frozen in time. The UFC refuses to develop new talent, and they're just relying on fighters who have been around, whether it be Amanda Nunes or Holly Holm or Juliana Pena. We need to build some fresh talent in this division. Holly Holm is not it. She is not the future. She is 41 years old with literally the worst fighting style you could possibly imagine. You know, I hear people talk about, different fighters being boring, whether it be Islam Makhachev or Khabib or certain, wrestling heavy style fighters. Holly Holm may be one of the most boring fighters in UFC history. Why are we constantly giving her main events? Now she got finished by Mayra Bueno Silva. I don't think Holly Holm could ever beat Mayra Bueno Silva after seeing this fight. And she's only getting older. And I know maybe she wants to fight till she's 50-some years old. Please, God, no. Go do it in another organization. Bellator could use her. I mean, Holly Holm is literally 15-7 in MMA. She's 15-7 in MMA. She's 41 years old. She looks slow. She looks sluggish. She doesn't even look remotely close to the fighter she used to be. And the style in which she chooses to fight is disturbing to me. To basically clinch and stall a fight because you can't win on the feet is just, it's not worthy of being in the UFC, let alone being considered the top of a division. I think it's an embarrassment to the UFC, and I really hope that the UFC cuts Holly Holm. Moving up on the list, and we have two more left on the list, and I was debating about what place to put them in. You guys can probably guess some of these names. But next on the list of who the UFC needs to cut, and that is Ashlee Evans Smith. Ashlee Evans Smith put on one of the worst performances I've ever seen in UFC history. I mean, this was hideous. She looked like she was drunk, she looked like she was high, and she looked like she had some type of physical disability in this fight. This was one of the ugliest performances I've ever seen in my entire life. I saw a video that Dana White posted of her in the locker room shadowboxing. This is one of the very few times I've seen a fighter lose a shadowboxing match themselves. She looked horrible. I know she was coming in off a long layoff, and I even picked her to win. I'm so ashamed. I'm so ashamed. And just thinking about this fight, Ashlee Evans Smith versus Ailin Perez, which honestly cut Ailin Perez for not finishing her. I mean, honestly, I really truly mean that. So add Ailin Perez to the list as well. You can't finish a washed up dead body of Ashlee Evans Smith, then you need to be cut from the organization as well. No amount of twerking in your post fight for incel simps of the MMA community is going to save you from being cut. She needs to be cut too. But Ashlee Evans Smith, I literally can't think of enough pejoratives to describe how Ashlee Evans Smith fought in this fight. It was disgusting. It infuriated me. And imagine the equivalent in a football game in the NFL. Imagine the equivalent in an MLB game, in baseball. Imagine this in any other sport. Imagine somebody performing to the level that Ashlee Evans Smith performed to at UFC Vegas 77. This was horrible. She looked slow. She looked disabled. She looked uncoordinated. Has she been training striking with Juliana Pena? I mean, seriously, and even that, I mean, I think that's a compliment to her because Ashlee Evans Smith, her striking is so bad, she makes Juliana Pena's striking look good. Her grappling looked horrible. She was taken down at will and controlled. She had nothing to offer. She looked tired. I mean, she literally looked like she was moving in slow motion when she was on the feet throwing shots. They had no power behind it. Is she even training? Or is she just rolling off the street for her 12-12 the UFC's willing to give her? The UFC needs to cut this girl. The UFC absolutely needs to cut her. I mean, how old is she at this point? She's 36 years old. I didn't even realize that. I knew she was in her mid-30s, but 36? And she's on a 3-fight losing streak. She has not won a fight since 2018 against Bec Rawlings, who Bec Rawlings was even a bum back then as well. So that's the last time she's won a fight. She's on a 3-fight losing streak. Hasn't won a fight in 5 years. I mean, geez, she's trying to compete with Conor McGregor in terms of winning lightweight fights. Conor McGregor hasn't won a lightweight fight since 2016. Ashlee Evans Smith hasn't won a fight since 2018. That is crazy. And the 2 fights before that, when she lost, so she's won 1 fight. She's won 1 fight since 2016. She is the woman Conor McGregor. Ashlee Evans Smith is a woman's version of Conor McGregor, except Conor McGregor at least has been fighting elite level competition. Meanwhile, Ashlee Evans Smith is fighting garbage competition and losing anyway. I mean, 1 win since 2016. And then to put on a performance like this after a 3-year layoff, what has she been doing in those 3 years? What has she been doing in those 3 years? I'd like to know. Because if there's any MMA coach out there watching Ashlee Evans Smith hit a heavy bag or train jiu-jitsu or train wrestling, like, yeah, Ashlee, you're really looking good, then they need to find a new career as well. I want them cut from their entire job at an MMA gym. This was a disturbing performance. Imagine you're a first-time, prospective MMA fan. You're like, yeah, I'm going to tune into the fights tonight. And you watch Ashlee Evans Smith versus Ailin Perez. I'm telling you, if I watched that back when I first became a fan, I'd be like, ew, I'm never watching this again. This is disturbing. I don't want to watch this. What are we even watching here? This is like slow motion, unathletic, disgusting fights. I mean, I could see literally a bar fight better than that fight. So Ashlee Evans Smith needs to be cut. Ailin Perez cut her for not even finishing Ashlee Evans Smith. And this was one of the all-time worst performances I've seen in MMA history, bar none. Moving on to my last cut, and obviously since I haven't said it yet, you probably already know who that is. The last person that needs to be cut from the UFC after their performance on this card is Chelsea Chandler. Chelsea Chandler loses a unanimous decision to Norma Dumont, and in that first round, she got clipped up so badly, she turned her back and ran as fast as she could like Forrest Gump and ran headfirst straight into the cage. This was probably the most embarrassing 10-second portion of a fight I've ever seen in the UFC. I mean, she literally booked it. If someone opened the cage, she would still be, word is she's still running to this day. She ran face first into the cage, and then afterwards, she's laughing about it. I mean, you are the biggest meme in MMA, period. Chelsea Chandler, I mean, the performance she put on, and she was talking shit before this fight. She was talking shit to Norma Dumont to come out, get clipped up, and run for your life. She literally pulled a CJ Vergara, but 50 times worse. And I didn't think it could get any worse than CJ Vergara, the performance he pulled, where he ran in circles at top speed. I mean, literally, Chelsea Chandler here, she should be embarrassed. Her family should disown her. She needs to be cut from the organization. She needs to be thrown in jail, quite frankly. To put on this type of performance at supposedly the highest level of MMA. I can't imagine. Oh, you guys don't watch MMA? I'm going to get you in MMA. Let me invite you over to my house to watch some fights. Oh, let's start off with Ashlee Evans-Smith. Oh, this is such a great performance. Oh, never mind. It's going to get better, guys. It's going to get better. And then you see Chelsea Chandler running like Forrest Gump, running like the Flash, head first into a cage. Disturbing, disgusting, and honestly, I want to crap on Norma Dumont for not finishing her as well. But Norma Dumont then just bodied her afterwards, beat her up, took her down, controlled her, just whooped her. Chelsea Chandler's a garbage can. She's a horrible fighter, and the fact that she's talking shit before this fight makes it all that much more embarrassing. The fact that you are going to turn your back to the point at a certain camera angle, you would be able to see Chelsea Chandler and not see Norma Dumont, because she's running like she's being mugged. Norma Dumont is chasing her down like John Jones was chasing down a criminal on the day of his fight from years ago, all the way back. I think it was the Shogun Hua fight. That's what Chelsea Chandler was doing here. She was running for her life. She needed to have a point deduction for stalling, for refusing to fight. To run like that, to turn your back and run, the only thing that would have made this better is if Norma Dumont would have just jumped on her back, put the hooks in Alexa Grasso style, and locked up a rear naked choke. That would have gave me so much joy. But on the other hand, this was probably the most comical moment in MMA. I've never laughed so hard watching an MMA fight. To see her do that, I've never seen that before. I've been watching the sport since 2010, 13 years. I've never seen that before. For someone to get hit so hard, they're just running for their life. And this kind of reminded me, this is going to be a crazy comparison, this kind of reminded me of Michael Chandler versus Will Brooks. I can't remember which fight it was. I think it was the second one, where Michael Chandler got hit so hard, he turned to the referee and called timeout, and they waved it off. They called it a TKO. He got hit so hard, he called timeout mid-fight for no reason. Got hit on the top of the head. I can't remember exactly where he got hit, but he got rocked so badly, he's like, timeout. Chelsea Chandler got hit so hard that she literally thought she was a track star. She was literally sprinting like she was ready to hand the baton off to somebody else. That's what she did in this fight. And then afterwards, she put on a god-awful performance by getting outstruck and out-grappled and dominated to a decision by Norma Dumont. One of the most embarrassing displays I've ever seen. And on this card, this was some of the worst performances I've ever seen. And the fact that Chelsea Chandler was on the main card, I mean, that's an embarrassment to the UFC. I think if I was Dana White, I was, whoever else is in charge over there, Sean Shelby or Mick Maynard, I would have told her when she was walking out of the cage, I'd be like, you know what? We're pulling a Johnny Walker with you. Get out of the arena. We don't want you here anymore. You're not even taking shoes with you. That's how bad that first round performance was, where she ran for her life. I hope it was the first round. I'm pretty sure it was. But that's how bad it was. It was horrible. And overall, there was a lot of very poor performances on this card. Now, before I end the video, who do I believe actually gets cut? I think Ashlee Evans-Smith gets cut. I don't think Holly Holm gets cut. I think Genaro Valdez gets cut. I think Carl Deaton gets cut. I think Tucker Lutz gets cut. I think Austin Lingo might be given one more opportunity. I think Terence McKinney and Ottman Azitar get one more opportunity. And I think Chelsea Chandler, I think she's going to get cut. Because this was at featherweight. I don't know if Chelsea Chandler can even make bantamweight. And I think the UFC is going to close down the featherweight division. So I'm going to say Chelsea Chandler does get cut. So to sum that all up, Chelsea Chandler gets cut, I think. Ashlee Evans-Smith gets cut. Holly Holm does not get cut. Valdez gets cut. Gets cut. Carl Deaton gets cut. Tucker Lutz gets cut. And then Lingo, McKinney, and Azaitar all get one more opportunity in the UFC. Let me know what you guys think about this list. Also, if you feel like it, let me know down in the comments. Put the entire list. Tell me who you believe on my list actually gets cut from the organization after their performance at UFC Vegas 77. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it. And thank you so much for watching.